Hi, good morning, welcome. I'm Yifan Lee, the publisher and editor of Orientations Magazine. We're delighted to co-present this third program in the At Home with ASHK Museum webinar series. The title of this third program is Museum Emergency, What Lies Ahead for Our Cultural Organizations. We have on our panel today two cultural leaders who will discuss how coronavirus has impacted the institutions and what measures are being put in place to safeguard their future. The first panelist is Libby Chan, who is the Assistant Director of the Hong Kong Maritime Museum. She is responsible for all exhibition and collection development and manages the curatorial, research, and conservation aspects at the museum. She was previously the Senior Curator of China at the Asian Civilizations Museum in Singapore, overseeing the Chinese collection and leading the revamp of the China Gallery. The second panelist is Feng Ping, who is the Foster Foundation Curator of Chinese Art at the Seattle Art Museum, an affiliate associate professor at the University of Washington. She helped re-envision the Seattle Asian Art Museum, which reopened earlier this year after an extensive modernization of its 1933 Art Deco building. Previously, she was at the Metropolitan Museum of Art as a Jane and Morgan Whitney Fellow and taught at the University of Chicago and at the University of California, Berkeley. Hong Kong, unlike many places in the world, was never in a lockdown. The Hong Kong Maritime Museum voluntarily closed at the end of March and reopened at the beginning of May. It is now closed again during this third wave of COVID infections here. In contrast, the Seattle area emerged at the end of February as an early epicenter in the US of the pandemic. The museum still remains closed today. Could you please let us know the factors leading to the decision to close your respective museums, and in Libby's case, the factors leading to its reopening? Libby, could you please start?
Yeah, thanks, Yifan. Good morning and good evening, everyone. It's a great pleasure to join this panel today. For our museum, like Hong Kong Maritime Museum, we now is closed because 2 weeks ago, the Hong Kong government launched a social distancing rule, and that limits to 4 people together at one place. And just yesterday, the government launched again that's limited to 2 persons. So basically, this third wave, most of the cultural institutions in Hong Kong are closed. And we are indeed one of the last museum being closed in the first wave, and that Yifan just mentioned. I think for our museums, it's always a balance. It's a balance of safety and visitor experience. And we are a private museum. We are not a civil servant system. So we, to a certain extent, we got the flexibility and autonomy. Of course, we communicate closely with the other governmental museums like LCSD Museum, Museum of Art and History Museum, as well as other private museums in Hong Kong, Art Museum ASHK, Hong Kong U Art Gallery, Asian Society here, etc. And the major reason, definitely in Hong Kong, that will be related to the government policy on social distancing. So that is something that this time we're really looking forward to the government to release the social distancing rule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for us, the closure was certainly sudden and quite disruptive. And we are also a private museum, the Seattle Art Museum. We are not a city museum, although we are on city land. So we followed the Washington state directives. So currently we remain in this, what is called stage 2 of reopening the state. And museums in general are required to wait until stage 3 for any consideration of reopening. So I think part of our difficulty is we'd like to coordinate with all the rest of the private museums in the area, but SAM itself actually has 3 sites. We have 3 sites and 1 staff. So we have the Seattle Art Museum in our downtown Seattle. We have the Seattle Asian Art Museum, which is our original building, and we also have the Olympic Sculpture Park. So any consideration of reopening has to be staggered. So we hope to open the downtown facility to see how it goes first, and then followed by the other locations. So we had hoped to reopen in August, but all those plans are currently they're on hold. I know the Metropolitan Museum announced that they will open on August 29th. So I think other cities in this country have actually reopened already, some for quite some time.
So is everyone working at home in the meantime, or?
Yeah, for us, we are all at home, but we have sort of environmental staff, and we have staff already in place. They have already been returning to work in order to get our downtown location prepared to reopen in case we can. We had hoped to do this on August 1st. So we're actually ready, but we're on hold at the moment.
And for us, it's on a rotation basis. It's kind of like flexible. So basically, we kind of have the social distancing measurement that either work from home or work in the museum, but it's in the office. The museum is closed to the public.
I know the exhibitions or plans at museums must be, planned far in advance, and so they must be so inconvenient with these disruptions. Could you talk about what you guys were working on before this started and how you've been trying to cope to limit the disruptions?
Shall I start first? So as you know, Yvonne, the Seattle Asian Art Museum just reopened after our 3-year closure for our renovation project. And we had a grand reopening in February. 20,000 people came in the first weekend. And then by March, we had to close. So we did not get to enjoy the fruits of our labor for very long at all, maybe a month or so. So that was a difficult moment. And the other effect on me, on my own work, was that we also canceled our major contemporary Chinese art exhibition called The Allure of Matter. We were the third of 4 venues around the USA. So this is real heartbreak. It's the loss of several years of work. And at the moment that we had to close, we had just completed many hours of meetings and discussions with our community leaders about this show. So they had spent all their time too in talking about this exhibition, helping us hone down the details. So these are, I would say, non-recoverable efforts. That is, you cannot recover the momentum of reopening a facility after all the great excitement that we've built up. And yet, perhaps we can look forward to having a reopening of the reopening.
Round 2 of the reopening. But why is the exhibition canceled and not just postponed, The Allure of Matter?
Yeah, so the Allure of Matter is in Chicago. This was the originating institution. They actually had decided to reopen their doors for limited run because all the artworks are still in place and installed. There are certain limits on the amount of time that artworks are allowed to remain outside of China before they have to return. And basically, it's a cost issue of us not being able to bring them back if we send them out back to China. So there are some financial difficulties, not to mention, of course, our broader financial difficulty of being closed.
Yeah, and for us, the Hong Kong Maritime Museum, our own curated exhibition that was a Chinese map exhibition that was end in March. So luckily, that did not affect much. And indeed, because we extended that show, and afterwards, the government indeed give us some subsidies because we offer some cultural facilities to the public. So that is a bonus. However, as a private museum, generating revenue is also quite important. So in the same location for special exhibitions that we organized, we do have venue hiring. So some private clients that there's lots of booking, they might postpone or like rescheduled. Having said that, the situation when we opened again in April and May, there's very enthusiastic both collaborations from different institutions as well as those private bookings. So there's lots of planning that would be kind of postponed a little bit. For the museum's own curated exhibition, we indeed are planning for 2 years. That will be next year, next spring. That will be hopefully that we would like to take the bulletin shipwreck from Singapore to Hong Kong, and is now going to exhibit in Shanghai. They have a definite date in mid September. So this period for us, that will be the time we got more time to get prepared, do the research, and do all the logistic preparation. And I think at this moment, everyone, either cultural institution or business, need to be very flexible, but like get prepared. So hopefully, since the collaborations and discussion has been long for years already, I think there's lots of flexibility for both sides. I hope next spring, when the coronavirus situation will get better, then will be the time when we open officially, then we could offer a good show to the public.
So Libby, you mentioned the Beliton Rec exhibition that's going to open next spring. I think it's coming from Singapore, from the Asian Civilizations Museum. Mm-hmm. Could you tell us the difficulties of planning a lone exhibition at this time when everyone is locked down or working from home?
Yes, yeah. So we closely discuss both with Singapore colleagues and also like the Shanghai museum colleagues because their experience that they are the museum facing really need to take the whole traveling exhibition from Singapore to China. That kind of like experience that we could learn a lot from. And I think at the moment, most important thing that would be the contents you have to get prepared, and then the logistics that all could arranged in advance. And of course, we need to work with the flow that is the current situation about pandemic, and just like would the courier need to stay at home or quarantine for 14 days, that's all need to be counted. And so for this one, since we got the flexibility and about the way to collaborate at the moment, so far our schedule in the museum and the schedule from Singapore for next spring is still like okay, it's still fine. Because we've been discussing it for years, and we also learned from the experience previously for several exhibitions, such as the international collaborations on the exhibition called The Dragon and the Eagle, American Traders in China, that has lots of international loans from US, from the Met and Philadelphia Museum of Arts, etc. And that kind of server experience of this museum get prepared for those traveling exhibitions that could help to be equipped for this exhibition. But yes, we do need to play flexible.
I guess no one's ever thought
loans from the US right now, that would be very difficult.
Yes.
So Ping, I know you said the Lure of Matter was canceled, but you had one of the inaugural permanent collection exhibitions was Boundless, Stories of Asian Art. Could you tell us more about this exhibition and its themes?
Of course. So the Asian art, the Seattle Asian Art Museum reopened actually with two titles. That is, the one title was Boundless, Stories of Asian Art, which is the title that covers the 13 permanent collection galleries. And for the first time, we actually have two galleries, which we consider to be our very first special exhibition gallery at the Seattle Asian Art Museum. So the show there is on contemporary Asian art from our permanent collection. So that one is titled Boundless. Is titled Belonging. That is, it treats issues of the question is raised as to where if an Asian artist is born in one country, raised in another, works in 3 different countries, where do they belong? So the word comes with a slash between the be and the longing. This to raise some of the sentiments behind this idea of geographic location and dislocation. That is the concept of longing for something. So we happen to have a number of works in the collection, which is can be used to consider very well this question. Also, we have very strong local collections of contemporary Asian art, which we were able to borrow from in order to help us emphasize certain ideas within it. So so whether it's about a sort of urban experiences, the concept of the relationship with the environment, the one work which by Kim Suja that we loved, it treats 3 different records 3 different chants from 3 different religions and plays them in a mandala-like device, which is actually a commercial jukebox. So this, the 2 exhibitions, Boundless and Belonging, they actually have many resonances together. That is, they talk about this idea of boundaries being actually quite artificial. The way that we define objects, the boxes that we put them in, can actually be broadened in any way that we wish, in the way that we tell their stories.
So I want to talk a bit about the audience and how, because our travel is going to be all limited for quite some time, the changing audience makeup for the museums. Libby, can you tell us about the how for art institutions in Hong Kong, how audience building has shifted from maybe more international and mainland Chinese visitors to local visitors, and how this would affect your curation and programming?
Mm.
I think this.
Yeah, maybe I could talk about my museum, Hong Kong Maritime Museum, because our location is like in Central, that very close to the airline express. So people traveling around the world, and they would, if they want to choose a museum, they would choose us or other history museum to visit to learn more about Hong Kong history. So from the statistics of our visitors, that lots of foreign visitors, and also we know that like there's a rapid growth of visitors from mainland before the coronavirus and the social unrest situation since last year. And but now everyone's locked down, no visitors aboard, and no mainland Chinese visitors. And then that will be the question, how to cater local visitors. And indeed, I think there's lots of room to do to grow and do. And that's also kind of when I come back home, Hong Kong is my home from Singapore. That's kind of a mission that like how to tell well about the story of Hong Kong, because Hong Kong is a port city, and that like that port city is the history of Hong Kong is about maritime Hong Kong. So in our curations and the exhibitions, we will put our museum in the position that to look at the labors in South China, in Asia, and the world. So definitely for the planning of programs and then the exhibitions, we need the local angles, and we also need to cater the taste of local audience. So I know our marketing colleagues, and when they do the Facebook page, they would use the tone more like a slangs or like local language. So kind of like rather choose to use Chinese on Facebook, and that might be suitable for a certain group of local audience. And but at the same time, then our curations that also need to highlight the local elements, such as the show we've done back to 2 years ago about the Silver Age, talking about the export material, export silver, and talking about the whole Chinese export materials. And we kind of highlighting one studio called Wan Hing that's in the 20th century that they come to Hong Kong, and the materials become very popular. They would sell in Tiffany on the Fifth Avenue in New York, and also different exhibitions like East meets West exhibition, talking about maritime seafood. We would also borrow and get more materials from underwater archaeological materials or excavator materials to tell more, explore more about the Hong Kong story that would be not just started from 1841, but 1 millennium before that. Still, like Hong Kong is a trade port. So that's the way we are trying to explore to cater the local audience.
I feel like there's a bit of a conflict because in my eyes, museums, like you said, with the 2 inaugural exhibitions at SAM, it's about being, one of the themes is boundless. That's my idea of most museums, that you have to show materials from different cultures. I feel like there's a conflict when, Libby, you say that you need to tailor the programming and the exhibitions to cater to more of the local audience. How would you go about balancing that? Ping, could you talk about it in terms of your exhibition plans in the future, and also maybe given the recent protests in your city, how do you move forward? How do you make it boundless and yet cater to the local audience? How do you balance these two?
Yes, that's quite a tough question to answer, in the sense that, of course, the very reason to have an encyclopedic museum is to bring the whole world to one place, right? And to be under one roof. And that is what the Seattle Art Museum is. And yet, especially with what is going on around us today, what I consider to be 2 pandemics. First is coronavirus, but there is also that of racial inequity in this country, in the US. One has to reconsider what is your direction that you want to go in. So I actually don't feel like there is a conflict in the sense of wanting to look towards community, because after all, your long-term audience is your own community. And if Libby's case, if it's a Hong Kong story that you highlight, in our case, it is actually to try and tease out what our community needs, rather than to infer and to sort of authoritatively say this is what you need. So instead of that, rather to ask what it is that somebody might want to help them get through these times. So I think, in a way, this authoritative model of museums sort of imparting knowledge, that itself, at the very base of it, has to change. So I maybe I'm talking too big picture, but difficult times require difficult measures to be taken. So if not now to ask these questions, then when?
Yes, I think, well, given the unrest last year in Hong Kong, that I think finding out what the community wants or needs is quite important. And Libby, I think with your programming to tailor to a more local audience, I think it would bring about a sense of pride in the community to learn about the city's history. So during this period, many museums and institutions have launched podcasts, webinars like we're doing now, or utilize social media to engage with the audience. What measures have you taken, and what has worked and what hasn't worked?
Yeah, so our museums, like all other museums, we got like various social media like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc. Like, to be frank, I think like cultivating social media, I would say like gardening. So you will need to take care of your garden, like add the nutrients, and then have plans, what kind of seed you need to plant. So I know our marketing call is very good. They try different things, very good. For me, I think nowadays the museums on social media, they definitely need a campaign, because when we open Facebook, open things online, everywhere is like flooding with information. So you definitely need a like good like strategic. um, Myself is a statistics person. I would rather also look at KPI, look at the visitors on your website, how many visitors and the traffic after during the COVID-19 or before the COVID-19. And according to the statistics that we got recently, that we got like 20 to 40% growth of our website's traffic during the COVID-19. And I would also would look how many followers in your Instagram, and why you got this kind of number, and why the other institution got that kind of numbers. And also like how to analyze the likes in your Facebook or all the comments. And it's all important. Myself like oversee the Google Arts and Cultural Institute online platform for years. I think this is a very good and useful and powerful uh, um, free tools for many museums, because we can promote our collection online, and that connects to all different museums in the world, locally, regionally, or internationally. And also that's have a very user-friendly online exhibition tools for curators to use. So in the past 3 or 4 years, we've been working hard to do this and then make it quite good looking. At now that is the time to bear the fruits. And then we now have several online exhibition being published during this period, and the online resources using Google Art and Culture is pretty well. And I think we also could learn from some museums and cultural institutions that have done very good program, and such as the Frick Collection in New York. And they launched such a fabulous program called Cocktails with a Curator. Then the curators would send you a recipe of a cocktail in advance, and then you prepare your own cocktail and then sit in front of your computer and travel with the curator and to wandering around in the gallery room, which is empty at the moment, and or enjoy the collection. So I think also the museums perhaps would need to know what's the strength of your collection, what's the importance, the powerful part of your collection or your painting, your artifacts, and can be conveyed through the social media. That would be because we got so many informations nowadays. We need something can touch people's heart. And of course, sometimes it would be good to do niche thing. But if we keep doing many things and doing peripheral things and could not show the core and then the strength of your collection or of your museum, then indeed, everything could be translated eventually to be the visitor numbers in all the social medias, as well as the visitorship when the museum's opened. So that would be my take on social media works.
Yeah, I find that so interesting, that the way that you put it, which is, Libby, which is one has to figure out what touches somebody's heart. So that emotional connection is something that is, people are searching for, that is a substitute to actually being together. And so these online events, I think, are wonderful in the sense that, of course, you can sort of mimic the being together part of it, or being in the space of our museums. So I think there is we are never going to be able to go back to where we didn't have always to offer a virtual at least part. Even if we go back to perfectly live events, everyone will still want to ask, where is the virtual recording of this? So I think it's something that has changed the game entirely. So I think a lot of museums are doing these at-home programs, just like the Asia Society in Hong Kong. So we also have a program, Sam at Home, where we recorded our our annual curator lecture series. And normally we would do that in the auditorium, but this year, of course, we were able to record all our talks, over Zoom. So mine was given with my conservator, so we both simply just signed in the Zoom and we did our talk together. So that was simply something that simply was the virtual ancillary of meeting in an auditorium. But of course, virtually in the virtual space, you can do anything. Anything is possible. So I think the question is then, if so, then what highlights the strengths of what your collection is able to do, right? So what are those strengths? I think I wouldn't try and compete with the Frick. I would
share your cocktail as well, right? Your cocktail recipe.
Yeah, I think we all have some version of the cocktails because we all need cocktails right now. But I think that definitely free is the name of the game. So I think here's an opportunity to bring conversation from anywhere. So literally, there's something like what we're doing right here, which is, I'm in Seattle and you're in Hong Kong. So we have the Gardner Center for Asian Art and Ideas with its own lecture series called Asia Talks. So these are conversations that we've recorded between Laila Kazmi, who's a filmmaker and producer, with artists. So folks from all over, in their background, Pakistani-born Shahja Sikandar, for instance, the wonderful Shahja Sikandar, and then Helen Zagaib. And this week we are having Hong Liu, who's a Chinese-born artist from Kaffa in Beijing. So she has historical photographs dealing with issues that are important to us right now, which is migration, struggle, humanity. So those are the kinds of topics, I think, that one can put together in this virtual format, which I think is very productive.
So Libby, in the month that your museum was open, have you seen a result of these social media engagement? Do you see was there a rise in visitor numbers, or?
During the I think almost 2 months we opened in May and June. Indeed, there's quite numbers of visitors. They come they came because of they know something on social media, and during that time we launched a small exhibition that would be what I try to do is kind of like using the very limited resources to combine the experience about virtual experience and physical experience, and make our own resources more sustainable. And that will be first we launched 2 previous exhibition, put it online, and then we kind of also make it in a format of a film, a movie. So we would like to get the visitors. Even though you could enjoy at home, you can like browse and interact with your computer about the exhibition. But when you see it on the screen, a big screen, you stand in front of it. It is an immersive experience. You can listen to the beautiful music and then enjoy the enlarged image to know about, let's say, the 13 horn ball with different country flying different flags, or the export textile with all the details in the gallery. At the same time, then you can see some highlights of the display from the exhibition. And if you want to learn more at home, you can still go back to do online on your cell phone or on internet, or you go to the bookshop to buy the catalog. So I think all of the social media, eventually we first, like Pin and Yvonne said, that the game totally changed after the COVID-19. But at the same time, then at the end of the day, we still want the visitors to come back. So that what we try to do is everything we try to do is we want to provide more substance, more meat for the audience online. At the same time, that provide the incentive for the visitors to come back. And we can learn, indeed for us, we could learn from the experience from China, mainland China, that lots of museums now is opened again. And the day when they just open, there's long queue. So everyone's so hungry about art and like museums and cultural activities. So we do hope that all kinds of activities is not replace the physical experience, the real experience, but provide more curiosity and then the eager to learn more when the museums open again. So that's what we try to do.
I think hopefully your museum would open soon, but what exhibitions do you have planned in the future?
Mm-hmm. So right now we are hoping to extend the run of those shows that we were not able to complete because we had closed down. So to echo your idea, Libby, that there's no substituting the experience itself, and people hunger for it. And please lead the way. I'm very eager to know when people will come back. And I think that is exactly it. No matter how good a substitute of virtual experiences is not the actual experience. So we have one wonderful show, John Okamfa, which is immersive and very sort of a very emotional work, which I am looking forward to having back. We also have an small O'Keeffe show, which will also reopen. Not mine, but I nevertheless take pride in them. Of my colleagues, of course. At the Asian Art Museum, I am hoping to leverage basically the things that are already around us. So instead of going for big loan shows, which may be very expensive, I'm taking the time to think deeply about the works that we have. So one is a small show of only 4 artists, which I'm putting together of contemporary Chinese artists. 3 of them are in our collection and 1 I am borrowing. But those 4, I feel, can tell a very interesting and very tight story about the ways that Chinese artists engage with classical tradition. So, as tentatively, there are 4 topics in this show. So I just want to give you an idea of why I think that 4 artists might constitute a show. Each one represents 4 different engagements. One is with ink, one is with artifact, one is with Chinese proverb, and the third is with Chinese landscape. So 4 different small idea, but one that could easily expand into a full-scale show. So this is an opportunity to think more deeply with our current resources.
So we have some questions from the audience. Okay, so I think the first one is what is your approach to making exhibitions and collections accessible to young children, and will that change in the future? Lydia, would you like to start?
Yeah, so indeed that maybe I could share some experience in Singapore and now also what we're trying to do now. Indeed, in Asia and the curriculum is very tight. The parents and students would not have enough time, always complain, and especially in Hong Kong, but how to really engage with the children? I think you really need to produce very interesting program. And we in Hong Kong, our museum has been doing lots of very interesting topic for kids, and our education colleagues has been doing fabulous job on it. But at the same time, we find the difficulties is that, like, even though your program is very interesting, that would not have many visitors because or could not cater to some local school students because they got lots of schoolworks. So what we could do. I think indeed when we plan the activities, we could also look at the school curriculum, and that's what Singapore is doing. And basically, if the exhibition I worked for Asian Civilizations Museum got different types of Asian art, then basically in the curriculum that they select certain types of objects, then the student have to view them in person, so that's have got the incentive to come. And that of course it seems like compulsory, but like that would be the chance for them to like really come to the museum. And our museums are doing something like not compulsory type, but if we plan well, first make it very interesting, that would be suitable of to indeed to a certain extent you need to be practical, you need to prepare the materials that would be the school teachers could use for the class, and and then they have an incentive to come, to bring the students to come, and the parents want the entertainment over the weekend. We've got lots of expect families to come, but a large group of local communities we want to really develop, that you still need to really produce a solid education program that I think just like the Chinese history curriculum this year from Form 1 to Form 3 is totally changed, that adds 10% of Hong Kong elements on it about Hong Kong history, which is, as I said, relatively related to maritime history. So would the museum get prepared to produce something that the school teachers, the parents, and the students want to come? But back to the very fundamental, I think produce something very can bring curiosity of us, of young people. That is important. And maybe some worksheets and labels can cater children would be good. So lots of ways we are trying. We are now figuring out what's the best way as well.
Mm-hmm. So this is an area which is more part of our education department's province, but I have to say that it's so interesting to think about how one cultivates visual curiosity in a child as opposed to in an adult. So in a way, it is to the first part is where to suggest something that might be curious, to raise curiosity in a child. So the visual part of it is so important. So we actually have one gallery in the Seattle Asian Art Museum, which I think is quite unique in the sense that it was a collaboration between curators and the education department. That is, educators selected the objects, and we worked together to pull out the ideas that might engage multi-generational audiences. So that's one sort of technique. Another is to give, we have this idea is possible for children to not be the ones who are dragged to museums to work, which is quite the opposite, which is to suggest that the children ought to do a tour and bring their parents to come with them. So agency, I think, is very important. Our galleries at the Asian Art Museum right now are no longer organized by geography. So the question is, they are organized by themes. So we brought this question to Seattle area teachers to ask them what they thought about that. And I think the consensus was that they already teach these topics in this way, that is thematically, that is they teach their students about art, not necessarily via this is a Chinese piece or that's a Korean piece, but they actually already teach with themes. So their response was that, thank you so much. It makes our life and our job so much easier that in one room, you can already talk about the issues that you want to talk about. So I think in a number of different areas, we can push along these different ways of engaging young audiences.
I feel the role of the curator is more difficult than ever. I mean, having to think of all these levels of different kinds of engagement, virtual versus physical, um, working from home most of the time, museum closures. I mean, I think this is a very difficult time for curators. Before we wrap this up, would you like to tell us what you think about personal challenges going forward, or how you envisage your deal with these challenges as a curator, and what skills perhaps that you have to learn, new skills that you have to learn?
Mhm.
I share first, and I think during the COVID-19 pandemic, the whole world kind of like changed upside down. And I would view it in a way that, of course, like lots of people say, oh, I'm in lockdown, like distressing, depressed, or like all kind of emotion, lots of psychological emotions in many people. But could we think in other ways that indeed that would, how many times you can spend at home, like this period of time, and you could like really enjoy a book and have lots of solitude time to think, to plan, to reflect. I think curators or working in museum, everything's so fast, and you need to deal with all lots of daily routines and lots of things are happening every day. But you indeed, we need time to think, to plan. That is so important, and I think that will be the time. I think that it's so important. The curators, being a curator, have to be very flexible and using your professional to and be creative to work with the flow, and also always think how to make your collection, your program, your exhibitions being relevant to what's happening and to your audience, and also make it accessible to it. But uh, uh, at the end of the day, I still believe that the role of a museum is still like very important to human being, and of course the artifact, the artwork, the collection that during this period of time, I think if we could find something from your collection, from the strength of your museum and the collections that could comfort people's hearts, that could give them have a dimension when they sit down in front of computer and look at your collection, look attend to your program, get something and can like comfort their heart. That would be something I think of philosophically, that would be great. So during this time, I would view it is a very treasurable period of time. That is a important human history. We share this period of time to do something new, something solid. So that will be the challenge, and that would be the way I would like to do it.
Libby, that's a hard, a wonderful statement, and it's hard to follow on that. So I guess what I'd like to say is that personal and professional have never been so close in some ways. So the Seattle Art Museum's mission statement is to connect art to life, art to life. So what is going on around us is so deeply affecting on both sort of broader strategies as an institution, and so also me as personally as somebody who who lives in this world. So it's both. So I feel that we have to be very cognizant of what we need to do to move forward together. That is, in the museum, we are making a strong commitment to really to talk to each other more, even though we can't be together, and to consider really activating these cross-cultural conversations between all these different areas and expertise in our encyclopedic collections. Because this is the nature of conversation. That we must communicate. We also must, you're a person with statistics, Libby, who likes statistics. We got to know what we have. So we got to analyze, start collecting data on all the exhibitions we've done, all publications we've done. by artists who are Black, Indigenous, people of color, so that we can better understand ourselves. What is our efforts at diversity and representation in the permanent collection? What are the numbers of works by women or artists of color or LGBT artists and so forth? It's because you can't know where you're going to go until you already know where you are currently. So both of these steps have to be taken. So, but then the next step is how to make and to enact real change, not just performative change, but change that is based on this analysis. So how to create a conversation about acquisitions criteria, how to really change the institution based on our prospects on how to really further diversity or racial equity in the collection. And this is beyond our most normal checkpoints as scholars and curators. You know, we analyze provenance and significance and condition, but to add a criteria, how it broadens and diversifies and creates racial equity in the collection. Those are as an equal partner to all the other things that we consider. So the third point I want to make is that, especially during times of social upheaval, we consider ourselves as cultural leaders. We must lead with empathy. We connect to community. That is, to take this as a chance for new beginnings, to connect to folks who might not necessarily have thought of before to talk to. So in this Asian Art Museum, I feel that we do not only have to rely on curatorial voices. If I want to answer your question, is that certainly we have all these new skills to acquire, but I think the trick is that we don't have to do it all ourselves. So the fact that is the sharing of authority can happen, and that makes it possible for us to do our jobs in an even better, even deeper way. So this is now is the time to leverage new technology to build this digital bridge to the future, but it's also to build this bridge to the communities that we have not before. So personally, I'm attending as many webinar conversations as possible, and there's certainly no shortage of these to attend. Last week there was an Association of Asian Studies webinar called Asian Studies and Black Lives Matter, which featured 4 Afro-Asia academics, professors of Chinese history, Japanese literature, anthropology, so forth. And tomorrow there's an Asian Art Curators of America discussion on what constitutes actionable steps, things that we can actually do step by step to address issues of systemic racism and sexism, as well as these values of diversity, access, equity, inclusion, and all those catchphrases, which we must do all our best to make sure they are not just phrases, but actually action.
Like being said, I think this is a good time to be more insular and to look at different ways that we can move the museum forward. And I want to thank you both for coming onto this panel today. And I think these are very good insights into what you're both doing at your respective museums. I want to thank you both.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.